A poor boy shared his only bread with a stray dog. Hours later, that dog risked everything to save his life. What happens next will leave you speechless. The chill in the late afternoon air bit sharply at Eli Merrick's cheeks as he sat alone on the cracked wooden bench near the town square. The marketplace bustled faintly around him, vendors packing up their stalls and townsfolk hurriedly moving homeward before darkness fell. Eli's gaze remained fixed on the small, hardened piece of bread in his hands, the only food he would have that day. Hunger gnawed at his belly, a relentless reminder of the struggles that clung to his every step. Yet, despite the cold and emptiness, Eli's attention was suddenly drawn by a soft, uneven shuffle from the edge of the square. A scruffy dog appeared, limping awkwardly toward him. Its ribs were painfully visible beneath a rough, patchy coat, and its eyes were dark pools of desperation and exhaustion. The animal's fur was matted, and its breath came in shallow pants, but it moved with a quiet determination as if seeking something more than mere survival. Eli's stomach growled louder at the sight, the temptation to protect his own meager meal pressing heavily on his mind. For a brief moment, a flicker of fear crossed his face. What if the dog was sick? What if it bit him in desperation? But something deeper stirred within him, a quiet voice urging compassion despite his own needs. Without hesitation, Eli broke off a small piece of his bread, crumbling it between his fingers. His hands trembled slightly, not from cold alone, but from the weight of the choice he was making. "Here," he whispered softly, voice barely audible over the distant chatter of the town. "You can have this." The dog hesitated, as if uncertain whether this kindness was real, but hunger won over caution. It slowly approached, lowered its head, and took the bread gently from Eli's outstretched hand. The crunch of the stale bread against the dog's teeth was faint but distinct in the quiet. As the dog ate, Eli felt warmth spread through his chest, a rare flicker of light in the cold shadows of his world. For a moment, the hardness of his life softened. His fingers brushed the coarse fur, and the dog responded with a tentative wag of its tail, an almost imperceptible gesture of trust. The market noise faded into the background, leaving only the two of them, the boy with his empty stomach and the dog with its worn body, connected by a fragile thread of kindness. Eli's thoughts drifted, mingling with the growing dusk. He wondered how many nights this dog had faced alone, how many times it had been turned away or chased off. He imagined a life of constant searching, of fighting to survive with no place to call home. And yet here, in this small gesture, a bond was born. But beneath that fragile hope lurked an uneasy feeling, a whisper of uncertainty that echoed in the recesses of Eli's mind. What if this moment was more than just chance? What if it was the beginning of something neither of them could foresee? The scruffy dog's eyes met Eli's once more, filled with a silent promise, a shared understanding forged in the quiet desperation of survival. Eli stood slowly, the cold biting deeper now, and the dog limped to his side as if claiming a newfound companion. The town square, with its fading light and distant footsteps, felt heavier now with unspoken possibilities. As Eli took his first step away from the bench, clutching the remainder of his bread and feeling the dog's hesitant warmth beside him, he could not know how profoundly that small act of sharing would ripple beyond the borders of Grayson Hollow. The world around him was harsh and unforgiving, yet within it a single kindness kindled a quiet strength, one that might yet change everything. Sometimes, the smallest kindness carries the heaviest weight. The ground suddenly gave way beneath Eli's feet, a sharp crack followed by a sickening plunge. He tumbled uncontrollably, branches scraping his arms and face as he fell deeper into darkness. When he finally landed, the impact jarred his body painfully and a searing pain shot through his left leg. Gritting his teeth, Eli tried to move, but a harsh stab of agony forced him to stay still. He looked up and realized he had fallen into a deep ravine hidden by thick brush, the walls steep and tangled with roots that seemed impossible to climb. The moonlight barely reached the depths where he lay, casting long, eerie shadows that danced across the rocky floor. A cold shiver ran down his spine as the night air crept into his clothes, seeping into his skin. "Help! Somebody, please!" Eli's voice cracked as he shouted into the emptiness. His words echoed against the stone walls, swallowed quickly by the forest's silence. Panic began to rise in his chest like a tightening noose. The thought of being trapped here alone, injured, and far from home made his breath catch. He swallowed hard, trying to calm the pounding in his heart. "Mom, I need to get back." "You'll be cold without fire," he whispered, eyes glistening with tears he refused to shed. The branches he had been gathering lay scattered nearby, useless now. From above, the edge of the ravine was thick with gnarled roots and tangled underbrush. Eli's desperate attempts to climb were met with slipping hands and raw, scraped skin. Every movement sent fresh waves of pain through his leg, slowing him until he sank back onto the cold ground, exhausted and defeated. The woods around him were alive with faint rustlings, the soft hoot of an owl, the distant snap of a twig, but no sign of rescue. Darkness seemed to press closer, a heavy blanket smothering hope. Meanwhile, at the forest's border near the town, the scruffy stray dog appeared, its paws leaving hurried prints in the soft dirt. Its ribs were still sharply visible beneath matted fur, but the animal moved with a determined urgency, nose low to the ground. It lifted its head and let out a series of howls that cut through the stillness of the night, sharp and frantic. The dog's eyes, wild yet intelligent, reflected a flicker of recognition, a calling it could not ignore. A memory long buried stirred within it, a fading echo of training and loyalty. Unaware of the dog's significance, Eli listened to the distant cries and felt a spark of hope flicker within him. "Could that be?" he murmured, his voice ragged but holding a fragile thread of faith. The dog's presence was a reminder of the kindness it had shown him earlier, a bond that now transcended words. Little did Eli know, this animal was no ordinary stray. Once a prized companion to a renowned search and rescue handler, it had been lost in these very woods months ago, its instincts sharpened for moments like this. The dog vanished deeper into the shadowed forest, weaving through the undergrowth with precision and speed. Its nostrils flared as it caught Eli's scent, every step guided by an unyielding drive to find the trapped boy. The forest seemed less foreboding now, the animal's confidence slicing through the eerie silence like a beacon. As the dog pushed forward, unseen eyes in the darkness watched with quiet anticipation, sensing a shift in the night's balance. Eli's leg throbbed with relentless pain, but his mind raced faster than his body. He thought of his mother's worn coat, the flickering candlelight in their small cottage, and the cold that would seep in if he didn't return soon. "I have to hold on," he breathed, pressing his hands against the dirt, searching for anything to anchor him. The forest, once a place of fear and mystery, was now a silent witness to his struggle and the unseen guardian racing to his side. In the darkest moments, an unexpected guardian awakens. The search for Eli had been underway for hours, but as the night deepened, the dense forest seemed to swallow every call and shout. Thick branches clawed at the sky, and uneven ground made every step treacherous for the searchers pushing through the wilderness. Back in the ravine, Eli lay on the cold earth, his breath shallow, the sharp ache in his leg reminding him of the fall. His fingers trembled as he pressed against the rough bark of a nearby tree, trying to steady himself. Darkness pressed heavily around him, and with each passing minute, hope flickered like a fragile candle threatened by the wind. Suddenly, a sharp bark pierced the stillness, distant but unmistakable. Eli's heart leapt. He strained to turn his head toward the sound, and through the shadows, a figure emerged, the scruffy dog from earlier, its eyes shining with determination and concern. The dog padded forward cautiously, nose twitching, and gently nudged Eli's side with its cold, wet nose. Eli winced but responded with a tired smile. "You found me," he whispered, voice hoarse, hope sparking anew despite the pain. The dog's tongue licked his hand, an anchor in the dark wilderness. Summoning every ounce of strength, Eli gripped the dog's collar. "Lead me. Please," he begged softly, his voice trembling but resolute. The dog barked softly, wagging its tail slightly as if understanding the gravity of the moment. Step by painful step, Eli dragged himself forward, guided by the dog's keen senses and steady presence. Every movement sent sharp jolts through his injured leg, but the warmth of the dog's companionship fueled his determination. The night air was cold, biting into his skin, and the distant hoot of an owl echoed like a reminder of his isolation, yet the dog never left his side. As they progressed, the faint glow of moonlight filtered through the trees, casting eerie shadows that danced on the forest floor. Eli's mind raced between exhaustion and alertness, aware that time was slipping away. Suddenly, the crunch of footsteps broke the fragile silence. Both Eli and the dog froze, ears perked. Eli's breath hitched as a tall figure emerged from the darkness, Dexter Crow. The woodsman's weathered face was lined with years of solitude and suspicion. His eyes narrowed with caution, body tense, a rough hand gripping a sturdy walking stick. Dexter's voice was low and cautious. "What are you doing out here this late? This forest isn't safe, especially not for a boy with a busted leg." His tone was rough, but there was a hint of concern beneath the surface. Eli's voice was weak but steady. "I fell. I need help." Pain twisted his words, but the desperation was clear. Dexter hesitated, scanning Eli's battered form and the loyal dog by his side. He looked away briefly, jaw tightening as if wrestling with an internal conflict. The silence stretched, heavy with uncertainty. Then, with a slow nod, Dexter spoke, his voice softer, touched by reluctant compassion. "All right, I'll help you, but we need to get you out of here fast." He reached into his coat, pulling out a small radio, crackling as he called for reinforcements. Eli's chest tightened with relief. The dog sat faithfully, eyes flickering between the men, sensing the fragile truce. Dexter's rugged hands moved carefully as he checked Eli's leg, wincing at the swelling and bruises. "You're lucky this dog found you when he did. Could have been a different story." The forest seemed to hold its breath as distant voices answered Dexter's call. Relief washed over Eli, mingling with the lingering pain and exhaustion. The unlikely alliance between the dog's unwavering loyalty and Dexter's hesitant aid created a fragile thread of hope. As Eli leaned back against the rough bark of a tree, the cold night air beginning to ease, he whispered quietly, "Thank you." Dexter gave a brief nod, his eyes reflecting the flickering moonlight. The dog rested his head on Eli's knee, steady and warm. Above them, the forest canopy whispered secrets on the wind, as if acknowledging the strange but powerful bond forged that night. The rescue was near, but Eli knew the night was far from over. Still, for the first time since the fall, hope was no longer just a distant dream. Sometimes, salvation comes from the most unexpected places. The moment Eli finally stepped outside his small, dimly lit room, the weight of the past days pressed heavily upon the town of Grayson Hollow. News of his recovery had spread like wildfire, whispers echoing from one weathered porch to the next. The townsfolk gathered in clusters, eyes bright with relief and admiration, not just for Eli, but for the dog who had become an unlikely beacon of hope. Shadow, as Eli had named him, sat quietly by the hearth in the modest home he now shared with the boy and his mother, his once scruffy coat beginning to shine under the careful touch of kindness. Yet beneath the calm surface, a revelation was stirring that would change the course of the entire community's future. Dexter Crow, the rugged woodsman who had saved Eli that cold night, stood outside the town hall, his weathered hands gripping a folder thick with documents and maps. His face, usually guarded and unreadable, carried a mixture of urgency and determination. As the mayor and a handful of councilmen assembled around him, the air grew taut with anticipation. Dexter cleared his throat, eyes locking with the room's attention. "Shadow ain't just any stray," Dexter began, his voice low but steady. "That dog was trained, before he got lost in them woods. He's got a nose for danger, specifically for gas leaks. It's a skill that saved Eli's life twice over." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle before continuing. "During the search, Shadow led me to a spot beneath the ravine where Eli fell. I found a slow leak in one of the old pipelines running beneath the ground there. If it had gone unchecked much longer, it could have sparked a disaster." The room fell into stunned silence. Gas leaks were no small matter in Grayson Hollow. An aging network of pipes ran beneath much of the town, and rumors of corrosion and neglect had circulated for years without any official action. The possibility that the boy's fall had uncovered a ticking time bomb struck a deep chord of fear and responsibility. Mayor Harold Green leaned forward, his hands resting on the polished wood table. "You're saying Eli's accident exposed a threat none of us even knew was there?" Dexter nodded solemnly. "Exactly. Shadow's instincts saved more than just Eli's life that night. They saved the whole town." Word spread quickly, and within hours crews were dispatched to the ravine. Men worked tirelessly, their faces streaked with dirt and sweat under the glare of floodlights. The hissing sound of escaping gas was faint but unmistakable, a sinister whisper beneath the earth. Repair teams sealed the leak, reinforced the old pipes, and began a comprehensive inspection of the entire system. Grayson Hollow was no stranger to danger, but this was the closest the town had come to catastrophe in decades. Back at home, Eli sat near the fire, watching Shadow doze peacefully on the rug. The boy's eyes were bright, but his thoughts were heavy. "Shadow saved me," Eli whispered, stroking the dog's coarse fur gently. "And you saved them all too." Shadow stirred, lifting his head as if understanding every word. The loyalty in his gaze was unspoken but fierce. That evening, Dexter visited Eli's house once more, a rare softness in his usually stoic demeanor. "You know," Dexter said, settling into a creaky chair, "sometimes the smallest things make the biggest difference. You shared your bread with Shadow, and that kindness came back to protect us all." Eli smiled faintly, feeling a swell of pride and hope. "I never imagined something so simple could change so much." Dexter nodded slowly, eyes thoughtful. "That's the thing about kindness, son. It's got a power people don't always see until it's too late." Outside, the wind whispered through the trees bordering Grayson Hollow, carrying with it a promise of renewal. The town, long wearied by hardship and forgotten dreams, was beginning to stir awake. Eli's story, the boy who shared his bread with a stray dog, had become a symbol of courage and hope. Together, Eli and Shadow embodied something the people desperately needed to believe in again. As the night deepened, Eli looked out the window toward the stars, his heart lighter than it had been in weeks. He understood now that the power to change the world often lay in the smallest acts, the quietest moments. In giving, we find the power to change the world around us. Disclaimer: the story you just watched is fictional. It highlights themes of kindness, loyalty, and the unexpected bonds between humans and animals. This emotional narrative aims to inspire compassion, raise awareness about empathy, and remind us of the profound impact of selfless acts.